Hello and welcome to my review of Time in Office, the second main range release of September, because normally in September we get two main range releases. Last year was in December because of how crammed September was for Big Finish, so this year we see it back in September, and we see the Silurian Candidate and Time in Office, the anthology release of 2017. Now if you don't know what the anthology release is, don't worry, I will cover that in the actual review. And it seems the Fifth Doctor is now becoming the Anthology Doctor, which I'm not complaining about because last year I had Memory Bank and other stories, and yeah, the Fifth Doctor is probably my favourite main range Doctor. And yeah, so without further ado, let's look how this story is presented, then we'll go on to my thoughts on this story. So for the cover art, and I've got to say this is probably my favourite cover of this year so far. So we've got Leela there, the Fifth Doctor in Time Lord robes, and we've got the Sassive Rassilon and everything. We've got Gallifrey, the Citadel in the background, Tegan looking rather worried, and sort of a Gallifrey sort of wilderness background there. Got the Fifth Doctor banner, the side, and we have the back. So if you want to know more about this story, do feel free to pause. And we've got the cast list there, and the total running time being taking a look inside the leaflet. We have advertisement for the next monthly Angel release, which is The Behemoth by Mark Platt, starting the Sixth Doctor, Constance and Flip trilogy, advertisement for Doctor Who magazine, and production credits. And we have the reversible cover, and the disc art is exactly the same for both discs. So what do I think of Time in Office? Now, Time in Office was a release I was super hyped for. I mean, just look at the cover. It certainly sparks the interest. Now, this release was said to be Doctor Who Does the Thick of It, which is a series I recommend if you haven't checked it out. And I think the thick of it is probably the best way to describe this release, as the story itself is a comedy political satire on Gallifrey, with this release basically being the anthology release of the year, with it being 4 half-an-hour adventures, but there is an overarching plot. Each episode has its own storyline exploring different aspects of the Doctor's duties as President. Part 1, like I said, each episode sort of has its own theme, with this episode being when the Doctor becomes Lord President Doctor, and with this story for the Doctor being set sort of when a Frontios is happening. So yeah, if you're wondering where that fits into the timeline, because I know some people are very curious to see how Big Finish sort of fits into the continuity of some things. But yeah, this is when events come back to haunt the Doctor from the 5 Doctors, with it not only the Doctor having to face presidential duty, but we have the aftermath of Barusa's scheme. If you wonder where Leela's husband is, Andred, he's in the death zone clearing that up. With this episode being split into sort of 2 halves, of the Doctor's president plot, and then we have Tegan and Leela doing their own thing, and you can't help but feel sorry for Turlough being stuck in the TARDIS, and yeah, Mike Strickson doesn't make an appearance in this if you're wondering. But overall, this episode just flew by, and it's just a lot of fun, great witty dialogue, and the perfect introduction to the shenanigans. Part 2, the theme for this episode is sort of visiting a planet to keep the peace, so in a way, it's kind of a state visit. Now the story may start off confusing with this battle going on, but as the story progresses, it becomes more clear, yeah, this story does sort of expand more on Time Lord history with this war going on. And when the Doctor and Leela arrive, it does cause a bit of tension, to say the least, as the Doctor and Leela have encountered the Orinsim back in Japan, and we have a flashback to a 4th Doctor and Leela stopping them. So who knows, Eddie Robson may write this story in full for the 4th Doctor range. So that does cause a bit of animosity, which does lead to a few sort of awkward but funny lines within. But the Doctor and Leela are just naughty school kids in this episode, and this story is very much for Leela. But Tegan does come to save the day, so there's a nice balance of the companions within this story. And the monster of the story, the Orimsim, are just a great idea, and the monster can only really be done on audio once you know the description of them. But overall, this is probably the most ridiculous episode of the bunch. If you don't take this episode seriously, and just enjoy the ride and enjoy what it's trying to offer, then I'm sure you'll enjoy it, because it's a story what's not really meant to be taken seriously, really, but it's a fun romp of a story. I think that's the best way to describe it. Now, part 3 is the shortest episode of the bunch, with this being the runtime being 23 minutes, and it's very much sort of trying to find the Doctor's replacement. So we finally see the Doctor sort of embracing the whole president stuff and taking charge and creating policies. And this does link to the Doctor's Academy days, with the Doctor visiting the Academy and reminiscing and some of the wacky stuff he did at the Academy. So that's quite nice to find out and explore. So we've got Tegan as well. Tegan goes on this adventure, so we've got the Doctor doing this boring political stuff, and we've got Tegan going off on an adventure with a character called Scandrius. With a name like that, you know it's gonna be dodgy. And yeah, he's very much a wannabe Doctor figure, and Tegan describes him best, but he's basically a tribute act to the Doctor. And I will say the last 5 minutes of this story are just absolutely thrilling, with Gallifrey's timeline threatened. Part 4. Now I will say the second half of the story, so disc 2, is probably the most this story links as it flows together, as we see the new Capitol open. And I will say the Capitol building is a very interesting idea, and it can feel claustrophobic with the building playing tricks, but that isn't the big twist for the building. And we do have nice little references thrown in, like the Dominators and the Quarks invading Gallifrey. And doesn't that sound like a story you want to hear and visualise and see? Because wouldn't that be great? And we get a nice moment when Leela says, you know, her and K9 killed 39 Quarks. And there are some funny moments scattered throughout, like the statue, you know, like a statue of the Doctor, with the Doctor saying, wouldn't it be embarrassed if you're killed by your own statue? And that kind of links to Revelation of the Daleks, this sort of cliffhanger. We do learn more about the presidents of Gallifrey, but overall the story can be tense at times, but still retains the fun, like Tegan and Leela taking the mick out of the Doctor wearing the robes. Now on to characters, the Doctor, Peter Davison. Now this story really uses Davison's comedic talents, which we rarely see on Doctor Who, so it's great to finally hear that. And obviously Peter Davison, if you met him, he's quite a funny guy in conventions. So obviously the Doctor is going to be quite tetchy and refuse to be Lord President, leading to him being quite worried, you know, what are the Time Lords after? And this story just really fits the Fifth Doctor. You know, he's just that youthful gent, especially in episode 2. He has great moral moments, and he's very reluctant to thank Tegan. And you know, him just fascinated in technology with the temporal drill. Honestly, this is a brilliant set of story for Davison to shine. Honestly, he is just magnificent within this release. This is probably one of Davison's best performances, and I say that quite a lot because Davison is my favourite, well, the Fifth Doctor is my favourite main range Doctor, and this certainly, you know, he just is great to see Davison in a new light, in the sense of giving him that sort of comedic role, really. Tegan, Janet Fielding. Yeah, Tegan plays a very interesting role, not only saving people, but she becomes the ambassador of Earth, which she takes very seriously. If you have seen Janet Fielding and Peter Davison at a convention or on panels, let's say they're very much like that in the story, just bickering and bantering between each other. And you know, this story we have her learning about Gallifrey's history, and she has to take an exam on Gallifrey. And yeah, she's just very independent within this story. As you know, she's saving the day and just doing stuff without the Doctor, so she's very independent within this. So it's great to see Tegan more expanded on, and Janet Fielding gives a great performance. You know, along with some great lines, you know, typical Tegan lines like, I'm not angry, I'm cross. So you just get traditional classic Tegan, and Janet Fielding just does a marvellous job, as you would expect. Leela, Louise Jameson. It's great to have Leela back and encounter another Doctor, as previously this year we had her face the War Doctor, so it's nice for her to meet the Fifth Doctor. Now we do have traditional Leela, the Hunter, and you ever wondered what happened to the Rashton Warrior robot in the Five Doctors? Well, let's say Leela took care of that. We do have some nice sweet moments with her and Tegan, with her comforting side, and also we get some funny dialogue like her wanting to ride a sit-on lawnmower into battle. It's just great, and part 2 is really Leela's episode, but episode 4 she does get a fantastic speech, and Louise Jameson just knows Leela brilliantly and just gives a wonderful performance. Castellan Lowry, played by Sherry Ann Davis. She's very much the Doctor's advisor, trying to stop the Doctor getting into mischief. So she's very much a know-it-all and a Time Lord who doesn't like time travel. A great character and a great performance. Chancellor Verona, played by Julie Teal. She very much plays the spin Doctor role, so basically the Malcolm Tucker character, if you like. You know, she's very much a traditional Time Lord figure, and a character what really comes into play in the latter half of the release and just gives a very nice performance. Now on to my concluding thoughts of Time in Office. Now, Eddie Robson is no stranger for writing around the Five Doctors, as he did write The Five Companions, which is another brilliant release. And you know, this story, like I said, you know, we have, you know, is a great continuation of the Five Doctors, as we see, you know, the aftermath of the Five Doctors with Gallifrey clearing up Barousse's scheme, and you know, the Doctor having to deal with his responsibility, and this release certainly did live up to the hype, and I just thoroughly enjoyed every moment. You know, every moment within this story is just golden. Now, you would think that this story would have been for Mark Platters. You know, he's very much the person who delves into Gallifrey and Time Lords. Eddie Robson has delivered a clever and funny script without a dull moment, from the eccentric characters to Gallifreyan politics. It's a great use of an anthology release, and it's just a great one-off release. And I didn't realise that I need Leela and Tegan and the Fifth Doctor together. It's just made me want more stories with them, because they're such a great team. You know, the Fifth Doctor, Leela and Tegan, they're just great, and I just want to see a trilogy. Come on, Big Finish. Give us a trilogy with Leela and the Fifth Doctor and Tegan. It'd just be great. So yeah, this is probably my favourite Big Finish release of the year so far, and it wouldn't surprise me if this stays my favourite release of 2017. So I'm gonna give this release a 10 out of 10. 10 celeries out of 10. Now, this story may not be for everyone, but if you love the thick of it, then do check this release out, because it is essentially Doctor Who does the thick of it. And yeah, like I said, episode 2 might be a bit far out, but if you just enjoy what the story's trying to offer, then I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And yeah, it's just a great way to close the Fifth Doctor off for this year in terms of the main range. It's just brilliant. Yeah, if you think Peter Davison, the Doctor's a bit boring and just doesn't live up to much, then definitely check out this release, because it will make you see the Fifth Doctor in a new light, because we see him take a bit of a more of a comedic role. And yeah, it's made me fall in love with the Fifth Doctor even more, and he's certainly becoming one of my favourite Doctors. If not, he's definitely in my top 3 Doctors now. He's just brilliant. So yeah, that concludes this review. I hope you have enjoyed my review of Time in Office, and it's a release I highly recommend, with it getting 10 out of 10, and I rarely give 10 out of 10, so that's got to say something. So thank you very much for watching this review. I hope you people have enjoyed it, and I'll see you in my next review, which will be the Silurian Candidate, the final story for the 7th Doctor Ace and Mel trilogy. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in that review. So thank you very much, and bye bye.